The abandonment. The maintenance shaft of Nexus 7 was darker than the space outside. Lieutenant Marcus Chen pulled himself through the cramped tunnel, his magnetic gloves finding purchase on the metal walls as he navigated toward the reactor housing. The Deep Space Research Station was a joint venture between humanity and the Krillian Confederacy, positioned at the edge of known space where the fabric of reality grew thin and strange phenomena occurred daily. Marcus had been working alongside the Krillians for 3 years now. They were a crystalline species, their bodies resembling living gemstones that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. They communicated through harmonic frequencies that his translator converted into words, though something was always lost in translation. The Krillians valued efficiency above all else, their society built on mathematical precision and logical decision-making. They found humans fascinating but ultimately puzzling, especially their tendency to make irrational choices based on emotion rather than calculation. The reactor core hummed with a sound that made Marcus's teeth ache. Something was wrong with the harmonics, a subtle dissonance that the Krillian engineers had detected but couldn't locate. As the only human engineer on the station, Marcus had volunteered to investigate. Humans had better intuition for mechanical failures, the Krillians said. They meant it as a compliment, though it always sounded like they were calling humans primitive. Marcus reached the observation panel and peered through the thick, transparent aluminum at the swirling energies within. The reactor used a combination of matter-antimatter annihilation and exotic particle manipulation that even he didn't fully understand. The Krillians had shared the technology reluctantly, and only because human industrial capacity had proven useful in manufacturing the containment systems. Then he saw it. A hairline fracture in the primary containment field, invisible to sensors but clear to the human eye trained to spot imperfections. The crack was growing, spreading like frost on a window. Marcus's blood turned to ice water in his veins. He slammed his hand on the emergency communicator. "Bridge, this is Chen. We have a catastrophic containment breach in progress. Initiate emergency protocols immediately." The response came from Commander Vex Theta, the station's Krillian leader. The translated voice was calm, almost serene. "Lieutenant Chen, sensors show no anomalies. Please clarify. Your sensors are wrong. I can see the fracture spreading. We have maybe 10 minutes before total containment failure. We need to evacuate now." There was a pause. Then the lights throughout the station shifted to a deep amber. Emergency protocols engaged. Marcus began pulling himself back through the maintenance shaft as fast as he could move. But the station was already shuddering. The fracture had reached critical expansion faster than he'd calculated. He emerged from the shaft into chaos. Krillian crew members moved with swift efficiency toward escape pods, their crystalline bodies chiming with harmonic communication. Marcus ran toward the human section where the 3 other humans on the station would be preparing for evacuation. The explosion came from beneath, throwing Marcus against the bulkhead. His head rang, vision blurring as emergency klaxons screamed. When he pushed himself up, he saw devastation. The human section was gone, vented to space. Sarah, Miguel, and Yuki, his friends, his only human companionship in this distant corner of the galaxy, were gone. Marcus stumbled toward the remaining escape pods. Only one pod bay was still accessible, and the Krillians were already boarding their pods with mechanical precision. Commander Vex Theta stood at the control panel, her faceted eyes reflecting Marcus's approach. "Commander, my pod," Marcus gasped, tasting blood in his mouth. "Where's my assigned pod?" Vexatha's harmonic response was matter-of-fact. "The human section pods were destroyed in the initial breach. The remaining pods are allocated." Marcus looked at the bay. 12 pods, 40 Krillians. The math was simple and terrible. "You're leaving me?" The words came out as a whisper. "The calculation is clear, Lieutenant Chen. 40 lives have greater value than 1 life. To give you a pod would condemn 3 Krillians. This is not personal. It is mathematics." The station shook again, more violently. The Krillians were entering their pods now. 3 or 4 cramming into spaces meant for 1. They would be uncomfortable but alive. Marcus stood there, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead, watching them prepare to leave him behind. "I've worked with you for 3 years," Marcus said, his voice stronger now. "I've fixed your systems, shared meals with you, saved this station a dozen times over." "And we are grateful," Vex Theta replied, entering her own pod. "Your service has been noted in our records. Your death will be listed as honorable. The pod doors sealed. Marcus watched through the transparent aluminum windows as the escape pods launched one by one, leaving him alone on a dying station. The lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in a sick red glow. The station's computer announced in a pleasant voice that total structural failure would occur in 7 minutes. Marcus didn't run. There was nowhere to go. Instead, he walked to the observation deck, each step careful and measured. The massive windows showed the escape pods shrinking into the distance, their drive signatures already fading. Beyond them, the stars watched in silent judgment. He activated his personal recorder, standard equipment for all deep space personnel. The device would survive the station's destruction. Its black box construction designed to withstand almost anything. This is Lieutenant Marcus Chen, serial number 7739 Delta. I am the last living person aboard Nexus 7. The Krillian crew has evacuated, leaving me behind because the mathematical equation didn't favor my survival. They had 40 lives to save and only enough pods for 37. I understand the logic. I don't accept it, but I understand it. The station groaned around him, metal twisting in ways it was never meant to bend. If anyone finds this recording, please tell my family I was thinking of them. Tell my daughter Emma that Daddy loves her more than all the stars in the sky. Tell my wife Lynn that I'm sorry I won't make it home for our anniversary. And tell whoever's listening that I did my job. I spotted the breach. I saved 40 lives today even if they couldn't save mine. A brilliant flash erupted from below. The reactor's final containment had failed. Marcus had maybe 30 seconds before the explosion reached him. He pressed his hand against the window, looking out at the infinite cosmos. My name is Marcus Chen. I was here. I mattered. And somewhere out there, humanity will remember that our lives are not equations. We are not numbers in someone else's calculation. We are. The explosion consumed the observation deck. Marcus Chen's final words were lost to the void, but his message was already racing through space at the speed of light. In 18 hours, it would reach the first human relay station. In 20 hours, it would reach Earth, and when it did, the galaxy would learn what happened when you reduced a human life to mere mathematics. The rescue beacon from Marcus's recorder tumbled through space, broadcasting on all frequencies. It was a small thing, no bigger than a coffee cup, but it carried the weight of a species' fury. The cold equations of the universe had claimed another human life. The Krillians had done nothing wrong by their standards, nothing that violated galactic law or treaty. They had simply forgotten that humans had different standards, and humanity never forgot its own. The Reckoning. The message arrived at Saturn Station during shift change. Communications Officer Riley Thompson almost missed it among the routine traffic, but the priority flag caught her eye. She opened the transmission and listened to Marcus Chen's final words. By the time the recording ended, her hands were shaking. She forwarded it immediately to Earth Command with a Priority Alpha designation, the highest level reserved for existential threats to humanity. Within 6 hours, every human in the solar system had heard Marcus Chen's last message. The reaction was volcanic and immediate. Construction crews on the Mars shipyards walked off their jobs. Mining operations in the asteroid belt ground to a halt. The stock market crashed as human corporations severed ties with Krillian businesses. Protests erupted outside every alien embassy on Earth. Peaceful but persistent. Millions of humans standing in silent judgment. President Diana Reeves called an emergency session of the Human Colonial Union. Representatives from Earth, Mars, Luna, and the 47 colony worlds connected via quantum communication. The debate lasted less than an hour. The vote was unanimous. Admiral James Patterson stood before the assembled fleet at Jupiter Station. The ships were a hodgepodge of military vessels, civilian transports, and mining ships hastily retrofitted with military-grade drives. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, though not for war. This was something else entirely. Ladies and gentlemen, Patterson's voice carried across the communication network. We are about to attempt something that goes against every logical calculation. We're going to search for one man's recorder in the infinite vastness of space. We're going to bring Marcus Chen home, even if all we find is a black box and fragments of metal. The odds of success are approximately 3 million to 1 against us. He paused, looking at the determined faces on his screens. I like those odds. Because we're human, and humans don't leave anyone behind. Not ever, not for any reason. Not for all the logic in the universe. The fleet launched in waves, spreading out in a search pattern that covered millions of cubic kilometers. Each ship pushed their drives beyond safe limits, burning through fuel reserves that would take years to replace. The economic cost was staggering. The Galactic Commerce Guild estimated humanity was spending the equivalent of a small planet's GDP every hour the search continued. The Krillians watched with bewilderment that slowly transformed into alarm. Ambassador Vexacina, sister to Commander Vex Theta, requested an audience with President Reeves. "This response is irrational," Vexacina harmonized through the translator. "Lieutenant Chen is deceased. His recovery will not restore his life. You are damaging your own economy, risking additional lives for no logical purpose." Reeves leaned forward across her desk, her eyes hard as flint. "You're right. It's completely irrational. Marcus is gone. We know that. But we're going to find him anyway. We're going to bring him home to his family, and we're going to make sure every species in this galaxy understands that human lives are not numbers in an equation. But the cost is irrelevant. If we let this go, if we just accept that Marcus was expendable because the math didn't work out, then every human working alongside aliens becomes expendable. Every human on every mixed crew starts wondering if they'll be next. That doubt, Ambassador, that fear, it would cost us more than 1,000 rescue missions." On the 7th day of searching, a mining vessel called the Rockhammer picked up a faint signal. Marcus Chen's recorder, still transmitting, still defiant against the dark. The crew of the Rockhammer were tough men and women who had seen death in the asteroid mines, but they wept when they recovered the small device. The recorder was brought back to Earth with full military honors. Marcus Chen's funeral was broadcast across human space and, by treaty requirement, to all Galactic Council members. 4 billion humans watched as his empty casket was carried by an honor guard of soldiers, miners, teachers, doctors, engineers, and children, representatives of all humanity. Emma Chen, 6 years old, stood with her mother Lynn at the podium. She held her father's recorder in her small hands and spoke in a clear voice that carried across the stars. "My daddy saved 40 people. They left him behind because their math said he wasn't worth saving. But my daddy was worth everything to me. He was worth everything to Mommy. He was worth everything to all of you who tried to bring him home." She looked directly at the camera broadcasting to the Krillian homeworld. "You count lives like numbers. We count them like stars. Each one unique. Each one precious. Each one worth the entire universe to someone. My daddy taught me that humans take care of each other. Always, no matter what. No matter the cost. That's what makes us human." The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The human action had destabilized the entire quadrant's economy. 3 trade routes had collapsed. 17 joint ventures had been terminated. The Krillians were facing the worst economic crisis in their history, all because they had followed the logical protocol. The council chairman, an ancient Vorlak whose species had dealt with humans for decades, addressed the assembly. "The humans have made their point. They are demanding a new protocol for mixed-species vessels and stations. No crew member shall be abandoned regardless of numerical calculations. All lives aboard shall be considered equally valuable. The mathematics of survival shall include the human factor, the immeasurable value of loyalty, determination, and the bonds between sapient beings." The Krillian representative stood, her crystalline form catching the light. "This protocol is illogical. It will result in greater loss of life in some scenarios." "Yes," the human ambassador David Chen, Marcus's brother, replied. "Sometimes everyone dies trying to save everyone. But that's better than living knowing you did the math and left someone behind. That's better than becoming the kind of species that weighs lives on a scale and finds some wanting." The vote was called. Species after species voted, some supporting the humans, others the Krillians. But when the final tally was counted, the human protocol passed by a narrow margin. Several species admitted privately that they feared economic retaliation from humanity more than they disagreed with the principle. 6 months later, the new protocol saved its first life. A Thraxian engineer was trapped in a collapsing mine shaft on a mixed-species colony. The mathematical calculation said attempting rescue would likely kill 3 rescue workers. The human mine supervisor ignored the math and led the rescue personally. Everyone survived. A year later, the Krillians made a formal apology to Marcus Chen's family. They established a fund for his daughter's education and named a new research station in his honor. Commander Vexus Theta resigned her position, and spent the rest of her life studying human psychology, trying to understand what she called the beautiful irrationality of human loyalty. Emma Chen grew up to become an engineer like her father. She worked on mixed-species crews and always wore his recorder on a chain around her neck. When asked about it, she would tell the story of Marcus Chen, the man who was left behind and the species that moved heaven and earth to bring him home. She would end the story the same way every time. We are human. We are irrational. We are inefficient. We make decisions based on love and loyalty instead of logic and mathematics. And that's not a weakness. That's our greatest strength. Because when the cold equations of the universe come calling, we don't abandon each other. We stand together or we fall together, but we never ever leave anyone behind. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humans were not logical. They were not efficient. But they were loyal beyond reason, brave beyond sense, and they would burn the stars themselves before they abandoned one of their own. And in the vast cold universe where mathematics ruled the movements of planets and the fate of civilizations, that human irrationality became the most powerful force of all, because every human working in space, every human on every distant world, knew one absolute truth. If they were ever lost, if they were ever abandoned, if the math ever said they weren't worth saving, humanity would come for them, always, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, because that's what humans do.